Shalom,
Here we,
shalom, shalom.
here we are again.
Greetings and welcome to the Saroth the Mage experiment, part 2 of our enlivening and informative discussion that we had with the legendary Keats Ross, equally legendary Derek Hunter. Tonight we're going to be maybe focusing a bit more on praxis. I'm not sure. Are we, guys? How Magick can help as a recovery tool and our actual techniques, because I think we talked about our kind of journeys about addiction, but we didn't talk much about the magic, did we?
Yeah, but you brought up in our conversations outside, just kind of discussing, the first praxis of addiction and magic is withdrawal in a way. So I think that'll be, enlivening to discuss because I'm sure we all have our fun stories.
Fun might not be the word, but we have our story.
Definitely not the word. Yeah.
I'm just going to tune into my channel because I've got a really bad habit of ignoring live chat altogether. So I'm going to try and actually talk to these guys. So who can kick us off with some, experiences of withdrawal and how the practicing magic actually helped us?
I've always wanted to ask Derek this question too, because I don't know how long you said you'd always been sinewing, magic and stuff a little bit, but how long until you got really clean did it become a full-on practicing method?
Well, I mean, in regards to magic. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that was something that I did start, while I was using. So that was something that, I was already doing prior to getting clean and sober. So it was something that I think it was already a part of my life. But for me, in terms of how I got into it, I think I talked about this last time, was that I primarily got into it through like conspiracy theories and my interest was really into like conspiracy theories involving Kubrick, and then that went into the Illuminati and stuff.
Discussed that. I guess my question, just to refine it a little bit, is when it became a serious routine in a ceremonial way with the sobriety.
Well, okay, so with the sobriety. Okay, so when the jumpstart, a number of years later. So what magic? So coming from me, coming from a very. I think all three of us are very similar in the senses that we're very skeptical in our approach to magic. We're not like, we don't see fairies flying around and dragons blowing fire out of their mouths, and so I mean, I don't know. My approach to it was, there's a possibility that those things can make appearances in the visual. I can see entities, prancing around and stuff like that. But for me, I'm never really convinced of something until I really see some evidence of it, And so what really convinced me was that it worked when I tried it. So I already know when I was deciding to quit hard drugs, and then again, remember, I was a major alcoholic for another year. So I was going through withdrawal, but then I just substituted the meth with alcohol. So then by the time I got to the point where I needed to use magic to help me get over alcohol, I had already known that I had a really strong confidence that it was going to work. So I think that I think people need to see like the evidence of the practice itself. And so for me, I think this is probably true for most people, but like the fact that it uses sexual energy in a really important way was something that really appealed to me. And I knew that primarily to make this thing work was to use the power of the sexual energy. And that, again, for me, it was primarily both a working with entities that I had a relationship with, so a very emotional connection with, and a very sensual relationship I had with them. Then working with sigils, and then just allowing that to play around, and sort of uniting this sort of theurgical aspect of having this very tight unification relationship with these deities, involving orgasm, sigil work, and implanting these, statements of desire. So it was in a very involved process and making sure, like involving dance, moving my body, twirling around, doing prayers, and getting really into the details of the different items that I would use. So it just become an all encompassing experience. I would eventually get to like a trance state. And once I got to that trance state, I could plop those statement of intents down. And,
Right.
and that, yeah, it was really, I knew that a lot of my problems with addiction had to deal with my deep traumas and deep habits. So it was like in combination of previous pain that I experienced and how I had formed habits to deal with that pain. So I knew that just like positive thinking was going to help, but I needed to penetrate really deep down. So I had this strong conviction that Magick would help me penetrate that area.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. When I was thinking about this show, we're trying to promote sobriety and stuff, but Magick and altered states of consciousness they're so entwined. And in my life, I kind of discovered Magick through altered states of consciousness. So I don't want to say, it was drugs that led me to Magick, but in a way it was. So, it's hard to say, okay, you just give up all drugs and then life is more magical. Right. It actually is.
Well, it can be.
Of all drugs, of course.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think it's it just that when we're talking about altered states, I think that what you had Julian Vane on, and he talked about his lecture about he wanted to give a lecture to these college students, basically telling them
Oxford University.
How they can get high without drugs, and all these different techniques that you can use to alter your state of consciousness, and alter your mind and how you see things that enter into these other zones of experience. Yeah. So, I think
mine was definitely parallel towards the end of heavy drug use. I was, it was parallel. I was in tandem with magical workings, but it definitely felt disassociative in a way. Like I remember it, pedal to the metal when I got real clean off things, and my curiosity became a drug, and my obsessive nature of embarking in these even painful kind of magical experiences, being out in the woods and meditating for 3 days under the full moon or the eclipse in August 2017, like putting myself in these ways to where my body wasn't getting pleasure, but it was almost the antithesis of that like really helped me dive into, the spectrum of feeling when it comes to magical praxis, and how important things like withdrawal, and things of like a more of a nasty nature, when it comes to the poisoned feeling or the letting go of toxins, the exorcism, if you will, of things like it can be quite joyous and very transcendental in itself.
I've often thought of the opium poppy for me was an embodied demon that had invaded my but the very first time I smoked heroin, I was in the band at the time, and I went in the practice room the next day, and I was like, guys, I feel like it's like a serpent that's just sitting waiting there, and they're all like, oh, don't talk don't talk daft. It was just a puff. I was like, no, it's so there is like and it's insidious, it appears like an angel. It cured all my problems. I was walking on air for days after smoking heroin, and then it gradually gets seedier and dirtier, and you're hanging out with the disco crowd when you first start taking it. 5 years later, you're in a council house, and there's dog shit on the floor.
Well, it's important too I think for me was to realize that the incubus had always been there sitting on my chest. It was just the advent of using, put the pressure on and brought him out in a way. You know what I mean? So it was like an unlocking of the serpent, but the serpent was always there in a sense.
Interesting way of looking at it. I never, I suppose it was always, I always kind of knew I was going to end up a drug addict because all my early heroes were Sid Vicious and,
Burroughs.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question, or a thing that I think people need to pose to themselves. What you mentioned, Keats, is that serpent, that demon, that the heroin brings out, or any drug, is it already there, or is it an outside force that enters our lives? And that's a good question. There's always that. I would always remember, my crystal meth friends would always say, like, "Oh, we're more real when we're on meth. We're more, we're more in touch with our emotions and our mind, and we say what we feel, and there's no censorship, or anything like that. But when we're sober, it's like we're not really truly who we are." And
Yeah, this whole talk of letting go of inhibitions, I feel there's an irony to that, because I don't think it's almost being, possessed and speaking through a tongue that doesn't have inhibitions. But I don't know if, the super self or the true self would talk and act like that if it got free will. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it always felt like looking through a lens in a way. Like,
right.
yeah, how I describe like the difference between LSD and mushrooms would be analog versus digital, or I mean vice versa. LSD being digital, shrooms being analog, because it always felt like with LSD or these kind of synthetic drugs, it always felt like you were wearing you're wearing glasses, and you were seeing the world through the lens, and you could always separate yourself a little bit and remember that. Like even in heroin or meth or whatever, it was always like I very much knew innately that there was, you know, a possessor in a way, or there was something that was, helping pull strings and rattle on about different things, and seek whatever. But when it comes to things, that are more analog, it feels a bit more of like unlocking something that's innate within the self. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the occult idea of finding your higher self was something that I'd really been into before I got into heroin. I would never criticize weed, or I think it does kind of link it with your higher self in a way. I'm not into total abstinence, as you know, but the heroin absolutely divorced me from that. So when I
Yes.
went through my period of withdrawal and attempted recovery a few times, I thought, yes, now I am making contact with this higher self, whatever that is,
And yeah, it seemed like it was an agitator.
And it's it can be a fantastic creative process, although there's a lot of pain, but pain seems to come with creativity, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, the advent of these drugs, even in just my understanding of my consciousness of why I took them, they are the outside agitator, but they're agitating something that's inherent within, in a way. You know what I mean? So it was like, it was a Pandora's box, really. And, these drugs were kind of the key. And it was an oak, like as long as you were high or dealing with these, you weren't dealing with anything. You know what I mean? Like you were allowed to just live in this trans-dimensional plane, separate from the, the woes and the sorrows of the day or whatever.
So go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
No, all I was going to say was, when you're a drug addict, life is very simple. You've either got drugs and you're happy, or you don't and you're unhappy. But then when you stop, things get a whole lot more complicated, and you need to find ways of dealing with that, especially after a long addiction. I was like 25 years,
Yeah, I heard a funny thing in a meeting once, and it was, once you stop doing drugs, all your drug problems go away. That's it. No, that's, you can look forward to that and everything that it, that bled and, corrupted in your life. But yeah, there's still everything else,
Real life rushes in. I spoke to a guy that had been like a senior when I was just coming up in the seedy world of drugs, and he was kind of off it. And I was like, well, how'd you manage it? And he was like, oh, I'm not enjoying it. Life's never this, life will never be the same. You'll be suffering for the rest of your life. And I thought, thank you for that tip.
So what do you guys think, though? Like we're talking about withdrawal, when we talk about that point when we stop doing the drug that we were addicted to. Do you think that at that point, then we're actually sort of naked with ourselves, and that the drug was kind of masking and covering up certain things?
Oh, hell yeah.
And so,
You know,
yeah, and
I
so
would,
part of the reason why people relapse is that
Yeah.
it's very difficult to deal with
It
ourselves.
is. And
well,
to say the diazepam, when I tried to come off the diazepam, which I hate to admit, but I still have like 4 milligrams a day. Sorry, I just could not beat it because I was a shrieking mess of horror. Everything just seemed very scary.
yeah, benzos are the worst to come off.
I've stopped heroin, I've stopped crack cocaine, but yeah, I can't.
Right.
I can't stop that. I need a break before I tackle that other one. The chemicals are the worst.
That's totally understandable. They really are. I was meditating on something we talked about last time. There was mention of, you when you quit, you are who you were before you quit.
Yeah,
Like no matter the time difference.
right.
And
Yeah.
it's true, like in many regards, but it's also this funny, weird kind of like, time discrepancy where you have the consciousness to know of all of the things you've done, but you're back in time in this older body.
Yeah.
Having
Exactly. I'm a 25-year-old mind in a 50-year-old body.
right.
And that's
Yeah.
rough, man.
And there's a lot of pleasures in that too. I was in my work with nostalgiamancy and like dealing with trauma, even just kind of looking at old photos and kind of invoking, the best times of that time. There's still a lot of troubles during those times when we were younger and beforehand. And yeah, there's this fallacy that, once you quit these drugs, that, after you're off them and you're okay without them, that things are going to progress in a way that you want, and
Right.
yeah,
And
I don't know.
it doesn't happen. No.
No.
Because life doesn't work that way. I think that's the thing, is that so often we when we say, do we quit this drug that we are so in love with, and we're doing like the right thing, like it's going back to being like a little kid. It's like our parents telling us, don't do this, or don't do that, and then we stop. Okay, I'll stop doing that, and so I'm doing the right thing. And then you expect everything to fit nicely, and it doesn't, and it like I think that's where it really hurts, is that it's trying to find the rewards. So since we've been training ourselves so much with getting a reward, instant reward, with getting high, that we're still looking for a reward in some way, and we're not getting really the reward. We're just sort of wondering, well, why are we doing this?
But of course, drug addicts, every single human being has that reward thing. It's just they use other methods. Their kids are doing well at school. Their wife looked pretty in that dress. Everybody gets rewards for behavior. Right. I hate to say it, but your drug friends were right. Drug addicts are more honest.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Well, they're honest, and too, that's, we were talking about before we came on. There's such a simple primal honesty, and when just that situation infects your life, right? I've always said, if I had the same drive and gumption, which I'm still learning to do, as I did, looking to score, that I'd have the world at my fingertips.
Yeah.
So there's like a transposition, I think, that we can take those powers of those hungers that we felt and utilize them for, the embetterment of the self, or, just, growing in a way. But it's hard when something like that infects your obsessions. It becomes the only ticket out of strife. It becomes the only ticket out of, just mundane terror, like,
right.
So it's funny. I'm still trying to figure out how to develop a mechanism to where I still have that hunger, that focus, but for it to be of something of a beneficial sort.
Yeah. So what we're trying to say is that spirituality and magic can be that other thing. We can chase that as hard as we used to chase drugs and
creativity. I mean, hands down. purest form of magic, and yeah, it saved my life many times. But as we're talking about magic as a recovery tool, like I can't express enough how much it's enveloped, my health. Even, I still struggle. There's still recidivism, as with always, not with the hard stuff, but say, I quit drinking recently, and, it's still going to be a rough and tumble,
Yeah.
but like keeping the eye on, the focus to expel or like have these creative exorcisms, like it means the world. I don't know if I could do anything I would be doing if I didn't have the curiosity or the hunger to like search or better the self or create or any of this,
Right. I think that's the key, is having that same kind of passion, which is what you're just talking about, Keats, and I think it's important to know, even if you do, if you, we don't even have to say the word relapse, because we could just say whatever. I mean, you drink again, it is what it is. I'm not a 12-stepper, so I'm not going to say you relapse and you got to start at scratch. You got to start at point zero again.
Right.
That's a really rough approach, and I can see the value of that. And I will get hard on friends and myself, and I'll get hard on you if I feel like it's necessary,
Yeah.
to take it seriously. But it has to be an all-consuming, passionate thing. And I think that this is why, like, what I really feel strongly that people should find entities that you really have like a really devoted love for. I feel really, really strongly about that. It's not a matter of just playing around with different gods or goddesses or deities or spirits or demons or whatever, but it's like you have a real strong attachment to them, so that you'll keep coming back to it. And
yeah. Well, I'd like to talk about that with you too, because definitely through my experiments with finding these deities, and they can be very not all mired within the traditional ideas of, spirituality, gods and goddesses or whatever deities. They can be artists, right? They can be,
right,
it's a whole gamut of things. And like with my divergent magic stuff, I've learned to like every day kind of equate, an offering of the day to a separate deity in a way. And they can be, musicians, artists, they can be Santa Muerte, they can be, uh, anyone from the, anything basically. And it's been great in the sense of not kind of putting so much pomposity in maybe their value through to traditional senses, and
sure,
kind of creating your own relationship, your own novena with them.
right,
Yeah.
right. They don't necessarily have to be entities or deities that have been worshipped thousands and thousands of years ago, or if there's a tradition associated to them. Yeah, no, definitely. You bring up a good point too, that previous artists have been huge in my life. Like throughout my life, since going back to my childhood, I've always like really looked up to previous artists, whether it be writers or poets or playwrights or filmmakers or painters or musicians, or they always played a huge role in my life. And I think it's and I don't necessarily think that's necessarily like a bad thing.
Well, I think my thing is the deification of their humanism instead of deifying them. You know what I mean? Like I have a real like constructive way of approaching. I don't like to deify people. I don't like to deify humans, but I do like to.
We can deify work, though, artwork.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe it's like looking at the aspects of these artists and stuff that should be inspiring, separating the artist from the artistry in a way,
And art is magic. I've always thought that was the
purest form.
magic. It's not a very fashionable idea at the moment with the grimoire thing, and everybody's gone back 500 years. But
yeah.
So I was talking earlier on about the idea of somebody that's just clean and how important that little gap you've got, You don't have to earn a living. You can get money from the government in our civilized countries. What a great time that is to do a mini magical retirement and really focus in on some practice, meditation, banishing rituals, blood sacrifices. If you, I'm only joking about that one, but yeah, that kind of stuff, physical. I used to do the same. I used to listen to loud rock music, Bardo Pond, flashing lights, do exhaustive rituals until I was absolutely sweating and trembling, and it absolutely gets you in a different place without drugs.
And I think it's important to remark to the necessity to be easy on oneself when first quitting.
Yeah.
It's like especially with hard drugs, I think the prime motivators should be being clean. Now, these are ways to help you be clean, like creativity, especially music and writing. I used to, when I was going through my fits of withdrawals, a pen and paper is the greatest magical wand, you could wield. Especially it's like in this method acting of setting intentions and, picturing what you're going to do once, this incubus has gotten off your chest, and writing what's coming in the future that you're hoping that the exhalation of this incubus is going to award you with, right?
Yeah, it definitely is important. I think in the beginning, I think for most of us, we've done hard drugs, and I think if you're going to quit that, it's going to be a really rough period, whether it's heroin or crystal meth, or in alcohol too is a rough one, very rough, and it's just so easily available everywhere. It's just all in front of everyone, So I think it's important, I think, to do really simple acts of magic at this point. Really, not get bogged down with technique, but more with. I think the one of the things you can tap into when you're in this desperate state is your emotions. You can use these feelings that you have of hopelessness and shame and guilt and powerlessness, and invert them, and turn them around. Use that anguish that you have and turning around into something positive, into hope or love for yourself, love for other people.
Angst is a great motivator. It really is.
That's also like a transmogrification or a transubstitution, isn't it? It's taking something and turning it into something.
It's a holy communion
and turning it into something spiritual, which is the essence of religion in many ways.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of one doesn't need to know a whole lot about alchemy. Just understand that basic principle what you just talked about is about, which is, I think, behind alchemy is using something that could be you could see it as a base or not very important material, and that material. I think the strongest stuff for magic is our emotions. I think that you utilize your emotions for your practice. It makes it all the more powerful. So you can use those emotions such as shame and horror and things that we don't really like to experience, and turn it into something where we can feel proud about ourselves. This is why I think when you go to 12-step meetings, there's a number of different techniques to use at 12-step meetings that I don't think that they're quite aware of, but there's a lot of magical practice going on, and I think they're doing it unconsciously. They're not aware of it. But one of the things that they do is, again, the feelings of shame and the feelings of low self-worth that we feel as addicts. I think, they talk about, how amazing it is when you can get a day clean, or you can get 2 days clean, and there's a sincere, congratulations coming from people that had been through it too, to confirm you and to lift your self-esteem up. So they're transforming those feelings of low self-worth into feelings of relatively higher worth anyway. And that transformation is really it's extremely important.
I'd be remiss if I didn't, expand on the power of prayer, even secular prayer, and that simple incantation, every day, even one of gratitude, one done within the communal aspect, say meetings or whatever. Like it's such a hot wire trick to help rewire positivity and focus in a way.
Yeah. And something I kind of picked up on, I've never been to any meetings, I've never joined anything, but community, when you're a drug addict, you've got your little drug using gang and you become incredibly close because you suffer so much and you have so many highs and lows. So you need another community to take that place. You can't do it alone, And I think the occult community is a fantastic place to go because they understand outsider kind of, there's a lot of weird, wonderful people in there. They're very accepting. I know from just having this channel, occultists are one of the most open-minded groups out there.
They definitely can be.
Yeah, I think the possibility.
They definitely can be. What, you mean they aren't always, Keats?
Well, just like any, it's just a disparate group of individualistic personalities, But I think us joining all in together for, this outward search for communion with the other, like has everything to do, even if you whittle it down, the cross confluence of mental health and, occult, cross confluence of, drug addicts using the occult or magic, like it's so profound how many of us felt or came from dejected, beingness and surroundings and rough and tumbles. And out of desperation, we sought this other and we found each other,
Well, when it comes to addiction, you're already automatically in an outsider position because, when you become an addict to something, you're kind of on the outside of society already. Then when you take that into effect, you have in the world of recovery, it's dominated by 12 steps. Right? Like the 12 steps dominates recovery for sure. And then that includes a big portion of the 12 steppers are Christian, are definitely, the followers of Christian ideas. And so then you've got that. So then when you've got people like ourselves who practice the occult, who do magic, we're even further removed from, we're even more, we become like a sub group, right? We're even our marginal
genre.
Yeah, we're like a sub genre, because it's like any because even like the secular people, like, Keats knows about it, and like that's what I do every week is a secular group because that's what I feel more comfortable with. I feel I have that's my sober community right there, which is really small. Like the secular sobriety group is very small, and but here we have. I mean, it's hard. I don't know of an occult support group. I mean, there's definitely people online who are communicating, but it's in regards to like an organized occult sober support group, it would be hard to find.
Start one.
Yeah, I was gonna say if there was ever a call to arms, I think this is the beginning of one.
Sure, right. Yeah. Well, I think there's people out there. I think there's a lot of people in the occult who are struggling with addiction. And there are probably a lot of other people in the occult are probably minimizing it because of the fact that so many people in the occult really embrace intoxication.
Yeah.
And, and so there's this sort of looking down on anybody who's in the occult as wanting to be sober. Like that's ridiculous, because our heroes, or some, our so-called heroes like Crowley and Spare and others were all, Jack Parsons was a major drug addict, and it was just all about getting high. There's very few examples in the occult of people who were sober individuals. I think
they were cheaters. Just kidding.
That is very true. Actually, that probably explains a lot for me, anyway.
Yeah, there's, it's riddled with, especially, coming from an artistic background, I'm sure with you too, Steve, like, and Derek, you're being funneled these works that sing to you, and then you dig deeper and you find out, the machinations that went in, the variables that went in behind making this work. And one of the common through lines is, disassociativeness with drug use, or, an outsiderdom with heavy drug use, and it can't be denied. That's not to say that great creations of work, and especially magic, can't be done. But I
Yes.
do think there's something that sings to me about the people that have kind of survived the rough and tumble, that have
Right.
been through it. Those are the people I want to listen to, like both of you. I'm not in the money to, or in the money's a funny aspect, but like I'm not in this to listen to and seek, and the guidance of people with an outsider perspective on something very generational for me.
Well,
And that's why we look to these people. That's why we're like, oh, is there a way out? But a lot of the times,
it was one of the frustrating things, I think, was just trying to find a voice of sobriety in these different areas. Like, it's hard for me. I can't think of a writer. Like, all my favorite writers were either drunks or addicts, and most of my favorite painters had problems with it. Although I do think Picasso was sober. I'm not sure.
He was fairly straight.
that
He
makes
did smoke a
sense.
bit of opium
Little
in
asshole.
his earlier days, but he was not a out of control addict or drunk. Picasso is about the only one I can think of.
Well, that makes sense.
Modigliani was my big hero, and he was a complete.
But
He died in a sardine-infested bedsit.
The one field that I do see inspiration and has inspired me in my sobriety is in modern music, from people like David Bowie. To some people may not like him, but Trent Reznor is another example. Like, there's a lot of people, or John Frusciante. There's a lot of people in the music industry who are create a great. I find I admire a great deal, who went through their turmoils and came out on the other side as sober individuals and continue to make great music.
Right.
Yeah, that's always the fear I had, that if I stopped taking drugs and stopped drinking, the creativity would go away, because that's what fueled it. And but I'm still drinking, aren't I? But not, not a lot. And I think it makes it look like I drink a lot more, because I specifically drink for YouTube videos. I'm not like that all the time.
Yeah. But I was gonna say, when I quit, it wasn't that the creativity stopped, it's that my excesses in putting stuff out stifled. I still created, but I had a little bit more wherewithal what not to release.
Maybe it's just when you're wasted, you don't have that quality control, so you just pick everything out. Oh, that's fucking genius, man.
Yep, that's exactly
right. Yeah, we've all done it.
Everyone needs to hear this masterpiece.
It's definitely there. I think the creativity does not go away. What the thing is that the drugs or the alcohol help us to tap into it. So the key, I guess, is the way to figure out people is, how do you tap into that creativity, which is what you're going to have to tap into for doing magic too. And how do you tap into that, the other side of existence? And I think that's where where one becomes really invested with your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
You really take the time and energy to invest in what's going on up here and what you can create in your mind, and then become less reliant on outside tools. So that
I was just going to say, one of the things, especially from a creative standpoint, I was always ready to just make music. Like, write. If I didn't know how to do something, I would learn it through the process of doing it. And I found with magic, like there's that inkling too, that it's just cooking. Like, if you don't have all the ingredients, you just kind of improvise. But I think with somebody that's transferring their consciousness from a disassociative, state into sober minded things, I think it's better to, hark on more traditional methods and kind of learn, before just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks in a way. You know what I mean? It kind of helps teach a routine. It teaches, a bit more of, yeah.
So what are we saying tonight to people who are maybe not deep into magic, but are really struggling with addiction and are looking for some, like a kind of a way of easing into magical, spiritual stuff to help them, not coming from the, I'm into magic, but I'm really fucked up on drugs and I need something to help me now. What would you recommend, guys?
Derek?
I would recommend that, again, keep it simple. Really understand, like really try to avoid overly elaborate steps or techniques. And there's a lot of different things that people can do. Like what I did was primarily work with sigils and invocations.
Yeah.
So like those are the two key things for me, is that I really, those things appealed to me, is the idea of invoking the qualities of an entity that I found attractive, in doing certain things, saying out loud. Your voice is very powerful, and when you speak out loud your desires and then also your devotion to an entity, it does a lot to you and your whole body and your whole mind. And then if these entities actually exist, they respond to it too. So I would say that, keep it simple. Really stick to your tapping into your emotions and using your emotions to get you out of it, because that could be very powerful. In your state of desperation, you can use that as an intense fuel to really create some powerful magic. And it doesn't have to be elaborate or anything. It could just be simple sigil magic, where you write out the desire. I'm no longer going to do heroin, and you take those words, you cross out all repeating letters, you take the remaining letters, you distort them into weird shapes, and then that's your sigil. And then just simply masturbate while you're looking at the sigil. And then
one of the ways. Yeah.
And then
that's the way everyone does it. Come on.
And as soon as you orgasm, make sure you have that thought in the exact same moment that you're coming. So that point is when your conscious mind is supposed to be in touch with your unconscious mind, and it's certainly whatever it is, again, I all these different ideas, I'm open to them, whether they're real or not, but it's powerful. And when you actually try doing these things, and one of the things I think it's good with utilizing sexual energy, is that it helps you to overcome any kind of social insecurities or hangups that one may have, and you're not worried about how other people will perceive you, So you're using very powerful energy, and then two, you're helping to overcome insecurities that we all have, and when you do that, it can become very effective.
I have an anecdote real quick, and this is very personal, but the last time I ever used a needle, I wrote a sigil that would be the last time I'd ever use a needle, like years ago.
Sigils are incredibly powerful.
It was the intention, and this was like 10 years ago or something, or not even, like, I don't know, maybe less. I'm probably outing myself and revealing too much, but that's why we're here today. But I had wrote, I was working very intensely with sigil magic, and I think for someone that's kind of transforming out of or like within withdrawal, it's the easiest and most effective thing to kind of help facilitate it, rather than I was also writing sigils on daily rituals, like just show up, take a shower this morning, get out of bed, sigils to make sure I eat, you know what I mean, like all of these written intentions just to do mundane things, because we can't, I'd be remiss if I didn't like expand on how much how hard withdrawal is. Like, it's incredibly difficult. So you have to be easy on yourself first. But I think that if you just show up, if you keep yourself to a rhythm and to a routine, and if you use intentions, you use sigils for even mundane things, like, you're in the most perfect like space to really charge work and build on it
Yeah.
by just making sigils about, obviously not doing drugs that day, but also, having 3 meals, making sure you shower, like,
Start small
because
and achievable.
start small. Like, I can't express that enough. I think everyone, especially when you start to feel the warmth of sobriety and you think that maybe the world is your oyster in a way, like, the impulsivity reigns supreme, and it could lead to recidivism if you're not cautious with it. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I would say, Magick is often, now this, I'm taking this straight out of a guy that I'm going to be interviewing on January the 22nd, Lionel Snell, aka Ramsey Dukes, but he said a lot of people come to Magick looking for power.
Yeah.
What you actually end up with is wholeness.
Yeah.
So he's a very
And
interesting one.
desperation is the biggest adjunct to
Yeah.
a lot of people's search for magic. So it's a gift to be in a state where you're so open to receive and be curious about these things that are so outside of yourself and communing with the other. That's a gift. Act on it.
Getting yourself back is a real treat. So, it's a fantastic time. I'm also reading Paul Hewson's Mastering Witchcraft, and he talks a lot about, gathering that witch mind and getting into yourself as a sort of powerful being. And it's the perfect time to, after being so unpowerful, after relying on dealers and this and that and this connection and this superstition and don't leave your heart in the bed, to reclaim your life, get into magic.
Superstition is my religion. Like, creating these kind of otherwise absurd rules just to have some sort of, a maneuverability through a day, to kind of like they're little anchors to kind of keep you awake.
Magical thinking is not a fucking psychological illness. It's a way of life, baby.
It really is. Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, at the lowest point, and Stevie and I have talked about this all the time, like, on my worst day, there are psychological tricks at work. On my best day, I'm communing with the other that's outside of myself, right? The whole gamut. The point is that it works no matter what.
Right. And if it doesn't work, then that's okay too, because I think that if for someone who's starting out with Magick and you're worried about whether it's going to be effective or not, I think it's more important just to do the work itself rather than to worry if it's going to be effective or not. I think, like you talked about earlier about having a routine, just doing it, just showing up and just doing what you plan to do is in and of itself is the form of success. Just
it's the small rewards. And like we said, you're building the evolution of, you went from extremes with rewardship, right? And so you have to kind of mire it back, and it's insane. All of your feelings come back to it. Like, I really feel it's the most magical time after exercising your body from poison to really start working on this stuff. You feel every cell in your body. You feel every emotion flood back. Like, you're just a walking wound that sings to the world, like, and this is the time to, like, really start, communing with it. It's actually really exciting. I hope that, like, excites people, and that knowing that, it's going to be drab for the first 3 days or whatever, and you need to focus on that and be easy on yourself, Right. But at the same time, there is a major reward that's coming. Yeah.
There's definitely the excitement of sobriety, and I think that people who haven't gotten sober probably don't know that, but there is. And in the 12 steps they talk about it. It's the first year is like you're in what's called a pink cloud. So when you first are sort of like you're gung ho about sobriety, you've decided, I'm done with this drug. I'm not going to do it anymore. Here I go. and you're all excited and you're you're motivated about staying sober, and you're spending time with other sober people, there's that excitement. And that's actually extremely helpful, because that year is also the most difficult year too. So that excitement about sobriety can help you get through a lot of the issues of withdrawal.
Okay, I'm just gonna butt in here, guys. I'm gonna wind it up because I've been working today and I got work tomorrow. But Jonaside asked a very interesting question. How do we feel about the similarity between addiction rituals and magical rituals?
How do I feel? They are pretty similar.
They're very similar, aren't they?
Yeah.
Scarily similar.
How do I feel about that? I think it's just an absolute truth that when we're passionate about something, even if it's a negative thing, we make these rituals and these reward systems in just the process of doing it.
So you're substituting an unhealthy one for a healthy one.
Exactly. Yeah.
And all society is based on ritual. Everything we do is ritual, from getting on the tube or the bus in the morning to.
And that's what I'm saying. Perform some animism with the mundane objects and, bullshit rituals of the day. Like, really celebrate them as magical workings too. Going on it's like doing the Burroughs thing where he does the color walk on your way to the bus station.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Every single thing. That's
everything. Yeah. Like, you can do it and it gets really exciting and stuff. So it can be as obsessive too. Obviously it waxes and wanes, but yeah.
Okay. Question from Jasmine Emmerich. Question: will you guys do a show with examples on how to make signals? I think she maybe means sigils for addiction.
I was like, hold on, I may have one right here, actually.
I have actually done a show on how to do sigils. They're very, very easy. And what? I don't masturbate over them anymore. You know what I do? I just do them in bright colors and post them onto Facebook. And the act of other people seeing them just seems to set them off beautifully. I rarely do a sigil that doesn't land nowadays. There you go, look.
Right.
Yeah. This is like early work during my recovery.
So anybody that's watching this back, pause that and then read that page and you'll know all about
it. It's a bit personal because it's like but
at
the same time, it's we've got so many resources on how to do them, and they're just create a simple mantra or simple intention, and you don't even have to go through the Grant Morrison thing of Xing out the words. Just focus on that intention and doodle. And a doodle until some symbol makes sense. And then you can charge it, as Derek said, with masturbation, or you can charge it by there's burning it, there's burying it, there's getting it out of your mind in a way by still an act of putting it in the mind. Right. So there's all sorts of ways to do it. It's actually quite easy.
And also there's one, if I had to recommend one book for someone that was getting into, I call it magic, but it's kind of, I don't know if I'd call it strictly magic, but Prometheus Rising by Robert Anderson. It goes through each, and I so believe that this is how our brains do work,
Yeah.
Circuits, and how, addiction is like first circuit. It's like, anyway, I can't describe it.
He talks about the quarter trick, right? Yeah. Like having the intention to just find a quarter on the street. And now that your mind is intended on finding a quarter in the street, you'll probably find many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I think the key thing is to be creative and use your imagination, and to know that, when it comes to magic, you really can find all kinds of ways to do it. There's no one way to do it. And when someone tells you there's only one way to do it, then you're wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And that, that's the great rub with chaos magic too, which is why I love it, but it's also, it's in the way that it should be. It's like I referenced earlier, when I did a voodoo ritual with a dear friend, he described the magic as cooking. And it's just like whatever you have, like you're going to read a grimoire and it's going to say to get, sheepsbane or something, and there's no way you can find that, but you can substitute, you can work with anything that's around, just the process of doing it, even if it doesn't yield results, keep doing it. And there's another issue that a lot of people have when they start is magical ritual will work wondrously the first time, not work the second time, and they'll quit. And that's all because you can't do the same thing over and over. You have to keep experimenting and trying and yeah.
Yeah. And if you find something that does work for you and and you like and you come back to it too, it can be something as a routine, that you look back to, because I think that's part of the reason why we become addicts is that there's a routine that we know we go to, where we know if I go to that crystal meth pipe and I smoke from it, I'm gonna get a certain result from it.
It's so simple, right? It's so simple. Yeah. And
whole thing. Yeah. And if you can find certain routines in your life that you can do maybe every day, because that's what I do. Every morning I wake up and I have a routine, involves prayer and ritual. And I cannot, and just like before, I couldn't get my day started without crystal meth or alcohol. I'm the same way. I can't start my day until I do those rituals every morning. And it's just something. Is it OCD? I'm not so sure, but it works, and it helps provide certain stability that my mind and my body seems to need, and I feel very happy about it. It allows me to do so much more in my life. And one thing I think it should be mentioned, we haven't mentioned it before, is the importance of meditation too. People who really spend a lot of time meditating, especially in the beginning, just to get comfortable, just be doing nothing. It's
though, I've heard people with kind of debilitating mental illnesses that meditation can be triggering too and hard to do. So there's other ways to supplement a meditation. Honestly, ritual baths, showers, just meditations and showers, just that routine cleansing of the physical self. Like, it means a lot.
Yeah, no, definitely meditation can be very scary. I think even if you don't have it, if you're not diagnosed with any mental illness, it could still be a scary thing, because all of a sudden you stop and you can even stop your thoughts and you're just there and you're with yourself. And it could be a very frightening experience. You're just sort of there like that. But the more I think people can do that, the healthier it will be for them, because then as the thoughts and feelings come to you, you'll be able to deal with them, I think, better, to identify them, what they are, where they're coming from, and what you can do with them. And then once you're in that position, you have more control over what you can do.
Yeah, you got to face it, unfortunately.
Okay, right? I've just had an idea for part 3. I'm not going to tell anyone yet. But guys, do you mind if we wrap up now?
Yes. Yeah. Stevie, thank you for hosting. And I know you had a long day of work, so I appreciate it.
Guys, I think we're going to, I'm not going to say what I think part 3 might be, but it's kind of leading on from that. But it's a big box to open right now. So I think we'll leave it for another show. Thank you, Derek Hunter. Oh, can I just say, please, Love Chaos and the End of the World, which is called The End of the World. I've got them. They're at Melanie's, of course. Every time I need a book, it's the place that I'm not at. But Derek Hunter, please check out his work. Keats Ross, famous in everything he does. Not famous for anything. Thank you very much, live chat. It's been great. Is that Robin? Did I see Robin? No, I'm tripping.
Eagles song.
Oh, yes, she is there. Yes, she is. Hi, guys. Thank you so much. I did try and chat a bit more tonight. Sometimes I forget. Okay, guys. Love you. See you for part 3.
Thank you, buddy.
Ciao.
See you guys.
Good night. Thank you. You can keep